in living today and not being afraid. But I think that's an awful price for people to have to pay. I mean, there was hunger in this. There were men crying. Kenny would come home crying because he couldn't get work. Well, he heard there was employment. We found a little house for $15 a month. And I took the girl, and I also took another girl. There was 2 bedrooms in the house, and she paid $1 a week, and she wasn't supposed to eat, but I couldn't stand that. So really, for $1 a week, she was not only living with us, she was eating with us. There just wasn't money for food to any degree. I had never cooked. I had never ironed. I was always busy in the studio, and I was teaching at home so much that Mother didn't expect that of me. I really didn't have time for it. So one of my aunts asked me what I would like for a wedding present, and I said, I want a pressure cooker. She said, that's an awful thing to ask for a bride. And I said, I want a pressure cooker. Well, I had the most wonderful time. And I say any 10-year-old can cook. It's just a desire to know how and to read a little bit, to experiment a little bit. I canned that first year. I did the ironing, the washing. I kept the little house immaculately. I had, oh, and let me backtrack too. When we were in the school home, one day a piano arrived. It was small, just one of these little spinets. And I couldn't imagine why there was a piano coming into the dormitory, into the school home, because we had one in the big room. And Mrs. Johnson was receiving it, and she beamed at me and she said, I have bought you a piano, and it's to go in the back room just beyond my study, and that is to be your studio room. Well, I said, Kenny and I won't accept that. She said, but it's a gift. I said, and I knew what she was going through to try to raise money to keep the school going. And I said, Aunt Mittie, I'm sorry, we just can't accept it. So what we did, and I think it was very good for Kim, and I had to do it. Every month, we took $10 out of that $60 and insisted that she take it. She was amazed and she was pleased. She said, I never expected anything back. And I said, Aunt Mittie, I don't want us to start out there. I want Kenneth to know. And truly, now, I think she spoiled me in this sense, that she gave and didn't really expect anything in return. But I love that little piano dearly. So that was a wonderful thing when I could take it as we rented. Well, what would happen in those days, of course, nothing would sell. And Fairhope, all these horrible little hovels. But Ken could do anything. So he would fix up whatever we were renting. And the landlords were so tickled that he would do it. They would give him the materials, and he would make charming little places out of whatever we rented. So, of course, if anything at all sold, it was what we lived in. And this happened to us 3 times. So in that, we were there that summer, and in another house that winter, then in the spring still another one. And we had very sad experience with the girl that we were taking, Cecile Bowen, and I loved her really dearly, and we got along beautifully. In fact, she'd gone up to Daphne Normal to further her education, and she was a good student. But she had an illness that none of us seemed to understand. She would have violent tempers. Perhaps we couldn't tell what would provoke them. I remember one day early on when I had moved into the school home, and I had set the tables for the supper hour, and she came in and she had a strange look in her eyes, and she walked up to each table. Fortunately, the food wasn't put out yet, and she just quietly dumped all the dishes on the floor. She went from table to table, just dumping the chairs. Now, what provoked her, I don't know. But she was a bedwetter. And in this third house that we were in, things looked really very promising. And Marietta Johnson had made the request then, if she could live with us, if we could find a home that we could buy, and it would have to be close to school. Well, things looked pretty good. Ken had come home after a couple of very sad trips out of town, hearing that there was carpentry work going on in Texas or whatever, and then he'd come home in worse condition, and when he left, there was nothing in the country at all. He had a little job in a grocery store. My studio had come back into full flame because the parents realized that I have a very nice situation now in which to teach now. And we had Cecile living with us, $15 a week, and we had this other girl at $1 a week. And Mrs. Johnson said, well, things look pretty good, and I have an architect friend, and we're going to lease a lot from the colony, and we're going to build a home. By the way, Mark, that lot that we leased is just north of yours and Donna's, immediately next to Walter Roberts. There's a little house on that lot now, Cliff Drive. We were very excited and making wonderful plans. Well, it all seemed to happen within a week. Cecile being a bedwetter, and I was concerned that she was ill, and in talking, the brother would call me, or write me, we didn't have to talk so. And he said, I'm going to ask you to do something. I know she's all right. She's been medically examined. I want her to wash her sheets. And I said, I don't think she should have to do that. After all, she's in my charge, and this is my responsibility. He said, I request it if she's continued to live with me. Okay, so one morning, I realized then, well, I had to do what he said, or he would bring me back. So I went in, and of course the bed was wet. He said, she's just lazy. She just won't get up. So I stripped the bed, and I put her sheets in tubs in the backyard. When she came in that afternoon from Daphne Normal, I said, Cecile, there's a little job for you to do. You, of course, wet the bed last night as usual, and she said yes. And I said, well, your sheets are soaking, and you must wash them. She didn't say a word. She went in the kitchen. She got a butcher knife. No, that long. She had that look in her eyes, and she came for me. She said, I'm going to kill you. Well, I had sense enough to run, and I screamed, and the neighbors came to my assistance. And word got to Kenny. Kenny came home. And we took her to a hotel, which at that time was the Dixie Hotel on Main Street. And I guess Kenny wired the brother or called him and said she would be up on the bus in the morning. She's coming home. Well, there went our $15 a week. Kenny lost a job the next week, so there was no income then except for a little bit I was bringing in. So Aunt May very wisely said, well, we better wait a bit on trying to build. There was all that shaking. Of course, it was a good decision. And from that house, we went to still another one on Phillips Avenue, and that was only $15 a month. Well, we had just the one girl at $1 a week, and then one of the alcoholics in town was brought to us by his older brother and said, if he can ever get well, I'm sure it will be with you and Kenny, Doc. And that was another $1 a week. So we did have $2 a week. And I loved this boy. He was just really a kid, this alcoholic. And not that we ever cured him by any means, but he was kind and sweet, and unfortunately he was driving a beer truck, which was worse than the world for him. And we managed somehow to survive that. And that was the spring, and there Kenny was fixing this house up again. And that's when I think I told something of that story, Mark, of finding this little place we're in, that we're in here now.
Yes.
All right.
It had belonged to
two
the state.
Yeah, two little women from, Connecticut or Vermont. I had to, by the way, just research, for tax purposes, through a necessity, research some of that, and this house was built apparently in 1926 by those two little women. And then, of course, we came into it early in 1936, 10 years later, we moved in. And then I think I told something of that story of Mrs. Johnson putting the money down, the down payment. And in researching that, by the way, and I didn't know, until just last week or whatever, and I was researching this. She didn't pay $500 down. She paid $750.